the flame of thought, of inquiry, of minds and hearts awakening to possibility, in harmonious alignment, we proceed to invoke the muses of wisdom, clarity, and shared purpose. In this light, I call upon Miss Kriti Sanyan to offer a vocal rendition.
Bhavani Dayani Mahavakyavani Suranara-muni janamani Sakala buddha gyani Bhavani Dayani Bhavani Dayani Mahavakyavani Suranara-muni janamani Sakala buddha gyani जग जननी जग जानी जग जननी जग जानी महिषासुर मर्दिनी ज्वालामुखी चंडी ज्वालामुखी चंडी अमर पददाने भवानी दयानी महावाक्यवाणी सुरनरमुनि जनमानि सकल बुध ज्ञाने भवानी दयानी महावाक्यवाणी सुरनरमुनि जनमानि सकल बुध ज्ञानी. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kriti. As we pause to reflect on the significance of this occasion, it is only fitting that we offer our respects to the late veteran journalist Shri M.V. Kamath through a floral tribute. I thereby invite everyone on stage to kindly come forward and join in this gesture of honor. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I presently request Dr. Shubha H.S., Director, MIC, to share the welcome remarks by way of a prefatory note.
Thank you, Dr. Anupa. Our distinguished guest, Shri Anantnathji, Dr. Narayan Sabahit, Pro Vice Chancellor, Technology and Sciences, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, university officials, media personnel, faculty, staff, and students of Manipal Institute of Communication and the various institutes of MAHE. As the director of Manipal Institute of Communication, I deem it my privilege to welcome each one of you present here today for the 10th M.V. Kamath Memorial Endowment Lecture, organized by Manipal Institute of Communication, along with Udaivani, Manipal Media Network Limited. Manipal Institute of Communication is a constituent unit of MAHE, ranked number 3 by NIRF this year, and has been recognized as an institution of eminence deemed to be university. Today we have with us our esteemed chief guest, Mr. Anant Nath, an eminent journalist, the president of Editors Guild of India, the editor of Caravan, and executive publisher of Delhi Press, which brings out a whole lot of magazines, and is one of India's leading magazine publishing house. He's here to deliver the 10th M.V. Kamath Endowment Lecture. I extend a very cordial welcome to you on behalf of MIC and MAHE fraternity. This endowment lecture is presided over by our Pro-Vice Chancellor, Technology and Sciences of MAHE, Dr. Narayan Sabahit sir. After completing his doctoral program in civil engineering and specializing in geotechnical engineering, Dr. Sabahit joined Manipal Institute of Technology in 1988. He has over 34 years of experience in teaching, research, and consultancy. He has served as the head of the Department of Civil Engineering, has served as the Joint Director and Officiating Director at MIT from 2008 to 2011. He has served MAHE in various capacities, including that of being the Registrar of MAHE before being appointed as the Pro-VC Technology and Sciences. Sir, a very warm welcome to you. A special welcome to the university officials, to heads of institutions, friends from the media, faculty, staff, and students of MAHE and MIC. The endowment lecture was started in the memory of the Honorary Director of MIC, Dr. M.V. Kamath, Shri Madhav Vittal Kamath, popularly known as MVK, and also addressed as Madhav by some of his close associates. The endowment lecture started in 2015, following the year of his death. Eminent speakers who have delivered the talk in the past include Shri Sudhindra Kulkarni, Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai, Mr. Surya Prakash, Mr. Parakala Prabhakar, Mr. Raj Chengappa, Mr. Venkaya Naidu, Ms. Nirmala Sitaraman, Ms. Malini Parthasarathi, Mr. Shekhar Gupta, and today we have you, sir. MIC was a dream child of Mr. Kamath. Since its inception in 1997, he was actively associated with the institute until his death in 2014. MIC is 28 years young. We have been consistently ranked as the top media and communication college in India. We offer courses at different levels, 3 undergrad programs, namely BA Honors in Media and Communication, BSc Animation, and BA Graphic Design and Digital Media Marketing. We offer 2 postgraduate programs in Media and Communication and the other one in Film Art and Filmmaking, which is a dual degree program with a film school in Paris. We also run a full-fledged PhD program. Mr. M.V. Kamath was born in Udupi on the 7th September 1921. He had his early education in Udupi and Mangalore, and then he moved to Mumbai. In Udupi on the 7th September 1921. He had his early education in Udupi and Mangalore, and then he moved to Mumbai. In 1941, he completed his Bachelor of Science and worked as a chemist before shifting to journalism as a profession in 1946. He started his journalistic career with the Free Press Journal in Mumbai and later became the editor of the same. For the next 40 years, he worked in journalism at different levels in different countries, influencing people wherever he went. He worked as the editor of the Sunday Times for 2 years, and he was a foreign correspondent at Bonn in Paris, and then rejoined Times of India as a Washington correspondent for almost 10 years later. This was supposed to be his golden age in his career. From 78 to 81, he then worked as the editor and then led the weekly magazine, the Illustrated Weekly, as its editor. He was appointed the chairman of Prasar Bharati Board in 1998, and subsequently in 2004, he was conferred the Padma Bhushan. He has written innumerable articles about politics and social matters in popular newspapers. He was also very familiar to the readers of Udayvani, the regional Kannada newspaper, because he wrote a Sunday column in it. During his retired life, he had the hobby of writing books. So he wrote on media, on politics, and on literature. In all, there are 40 books written by him about its chronicling its history, like that of Corporation Bank, Syndicate Bank, and others. He has also written 2 books on the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji. For years, he would be in his office at MIC much before all of us would reach, by 8:45. He read his newspapers, answered mails, wrote columns, interacted with students, parents, and any guests that came in, and remained in office till he finished all his work, sometimes till 5:30 in the evening. His commitment to work was very high, and he left for the heavenly abode at a time where he had completed the columns for the next week, and his commitment was already done. He was a keen learner and a great storyteller. He would describe the scene at the gateway of India on the day of the independence with the same zeal year after year for those of us who would listen to his lecture during the Independence Day celebration at our university. Mr. Kamath is known for his integrity as a journalist and his courage to call a spade as a spade. I will not talk much more about him. We have a lot of books on him in our library. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered here today to remember and pay our respects to this personality. In 2015, MIC started this endowment lecture in his memory, and we hope to keep his memory alive in future every year. Once again, a very warm welcome to each one of you present here for this lecture today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We now dearly invite Dr. Narayana Sabahit, Pro Vice Chancellor Mahe, to share his vision on Mahe and the M.V. Kamath Memoriam.
Mr. Anantnath, Editor Karavan, Chief Guest of today's function, Dr. Shubha, Director MIC, faculty members of MIC, invited guests, students of MIC, and all other invitees, good afternoon to all of you. As a technical person, it may be difficult to talk about a renowned journalist. But what I understand after joining here, as a honorary director of MIC, many times, I got the opportunity to interact with him. If you look at his journey, starting from, the childhood, he is from this place, born and, spent his childhood here, schoolings, everything from Udupi and nearby Mangalore. And he wanted to become a doctor. Might be, inspired by our founder, late Dr. T.M.A. Pais, because the time he turns maybe 18 or 20, Dr. T.M.A. Pai was a very well-known figure in this region. Probably, a role model for younger, the generation. So maybe that is the reason he was looking for, a medical seat, and he qualified. But then he got the seat in Mumbai. So since his childhood was in Udupi, it was under, at that time, the Madras presidency. And the seat where he have got, it was under Mumbai presidency. So to study in Mumbai, he should have a transfer from here to the Mumbai. So there is a transfer fee of rupees 3,000 at that time. So he was not able to pay the fees. So then he thought, the better not to pursue for it. And initially, he took the pharmacy here itself, he studied. But later his second option was the journalism. So he went to Mumbai. There he studied St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, the science. And after graduation, he started, the journalism, took up a job, started saving money. For what? To pursue his, the first option, doctor. So at that time, he was around 34. So he was by that time, well-known journalist. Through his influence, he contacted the health minister then, Mr. Shantilal Shah. Get a medical seat. So then he told, see, you are already 34. By the time you finish your medical, you will become 41. It's not advisable to start, the medical profession at the age of 41. So he was convinced. And then he thought that, better, consider his advice and, continued in the journalism profession. That's how, it has, he has become, one of the top journalists in India. So coming to the contribution to Mahi, it is immense contribution, I could say. Because any function he used to, address our faculty, students, even leaderships, talking about Dr. T.M.A. Pai, inspiring, our people. It was quite amazing. So much so that he used to give a talk on Dr. T.M.A. Pai during our Founders' Day, April. There used to be a small talk in our university building. So he was the one who used to give that talk. But once he died in 2014, our Pro-Chancellor told, better not to have any talk during that period because, there was no replacement as such for, the talk about Dr. T.M.A. Pai during that occasion. So that was the kind of, the attachment with Mahi. That was the kind of, the respect that he had with our, founder, late Dr. T.M.A. Pai. In fact, he was also partly responsible starting the Kasturba Medical College, KMC, Manipal. When our founder, way back in 1953, when decided to start a medical college in this barren hilltop, he wanted some assistance from his close, the friend, Dr. A.V. Baliga. Dr. A.V. Baliga was a well-known surgeon, a renowned surgeon in Mumbai, Kim Hospital. So he went there and put his proposal and requested Dr. A.V. Baliga to help in his journey of starting a medical college. The moment he proposed this, Dr. A.V. Baliga exclaimed that you are mad and out of your senses. Because starting a medical college on a barren hilltop, where will you get the professors? Where will you get the dead bodies? Where will you get the hospitals? So that was just, the kind of impossible, next to impossible, I could say. So he was a little, maybe at that point of time, upset, and he came out. When he came out, he saw Mr. Kamath. Kamath was sitting outside. And our founder, TMA Pai, he just asked him for a favor, Mr. Kamath. Kamath, can you put a small advertisement in the newspaper saying that, the Manipal is going to start a medical college, so asking for, the request, asking for the applications. So he put up an ad. The very next day onwards, he got a large number of applications. So that's how, he thought that yes, since we have got good number of applications, we should start. So later, even Dr. A.V. Baliga came to his support, and not only the medical college, even before that also he helped starting the Academy of General Education. Many institutions he came and supported. In fact, Dr. A.V. Baliga himself has started many, the colleges in and around, the districts of Uttar Kannada and as well as the Dakshini Kannada at that point of time. So that's how, he helped. And later, of course, he came back here and started, the MIC, started as an honorary director, and then, he helped us to build this institution to this level. So, of course, his passions are, of course, he was a bachelor, all of you know very well. He himself, the cooks the food. And he was fond of, the using his typewriter. I thought Shubha will tell something about it. Typewriter is a very old typewriter. I think it is still there in MIC. It was with him for about 60 years. Remember, whenever he used to go, outside the country, he used to carry that, the Italian old typewriter. And he used to call it as my girlfriend. So that's the kind of attachment he had with that. He never used desktop or the laptops. As Shubha mentioned, he comes early in the morning and completes his work. Only then he used to go home. So that's the kind of, the attachment he had with us for a very long period of time. So today, we are having the 10th memorial lecture of M.E. Kamath, and we have invited a renowned journalist, Mr. Nath, and I'm sure you are all going to enjoy this lecture. We had in the past also very good lecture. In fact, some of them I was a part of it also. Padmarani was kind enough to invite me for the programs. So I'm sure today also you will really enjoy this lecture, and I expect some good question answer session also in this. Thank you very much, and thanks to Mr. Anant Nath also for accepting our invitation to come here and delivering this 10th M.E. Kamath's memorial lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving us interesting snippets on M.V. Kamath's typewriter, and also for alongside giving us a very vivid chronographic account of Sri M.V. Kamath's legacy in tandem with MIC's own journey. That said, I currently request Dr. Manjula Venkataragavan, Associate Professor MIC, to introduce the chief guest.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our distinguished guest, Mr. Anant Nath, a figure whose professional journey offers rich learning for students at MIC. Mr. Nath currently serves as the editor of the magazine The Caravan and as the executive publisher of Delhi Press. He has held key leadership roles in one of India's oldest and most respected publishing houses, the Delhi Press, bringing together editorial vision, strategic business acumen, and commitment to journalistic integrity. After completing his MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and an MA in Political Science from Columbia University, he joined the family publishing business at Delhi Press. Starting out in marketing to understand the business of publishing, he then moved into editorial leadership and in 2000 relaunched the Caravan as a long-form narrative journalism magazine, an effort that has helped redefine magazine journalism in India. Under his stewardship, the Caravan has emerged as a beacon of in-depth journalism at a time when the media space is often dominated by short-form, click-driven content. Industry peers describe him as a listener leader, someone who commands without noise and builds consensus, a leader with intellectual clarity and editorial integrity. Beyond his organizational roles, Mr. Nath serves as the President of Editors Guild of India. In the context of MIC's programs, Mr. Nath's experiences intersects critically with multiple themes: the transformation of print to digital media business models for content in an age of disruption, and the ethical responsibilities of journalism within a democratic society. His work exemplifies how strategic thinking, editorial vision, and adaptive leadership converge in the media domain. We are honored to have him with us today, and I'm confident that his insights will enrich our understanding of contemporary media and journalism. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Nath. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Manjula, for such an eloquent introduction, gracious introduction. Dr. Narayan, Dr. Shubha, first of all, thank you for inviting me to Manipal, my first visit to this great institution. I spent the morning, of course, Manipal is one of the largest educational institutions, but only when you come here is when you realize the size, scale, and the thoughtfulness with which the institution has been put together, and such a great campus and a great community that you have. Am I audible? Yeah? So it's absolute pleasure to be here, to be addressing journalism students of communication, to be in the, of course, the esteemed company of faculty members, and of course to join the ranks of people, the illustrious speakers who have come before me, and of course in the name of Mr. M.B. Kamath, one of the tallest Indian journalists of the last, last 50 years, I would say. The morning I spent, Dr. Shubha very kindly showed me around the MIC campus, and the first thing struck me was the warmth and the feeling of retreat. It's like you're studying in a retreat. It doesn't feel like a very large sort of institutional setup which is meant to intimidate, and some institutions can intimidate you. And I think the first thing that strikes, at least that struck me, was the warmth of it and the effortlessness around which the institution seemed to have a vibe, which is all the more important. This sense of community is all the more important given the profession that you guys have chosen, journalism. And of course, we'll come to this subject. Journalism is in great crisis right now, and whoever is entering this field is obviously making a very brave and a very conscious choice, and it's important that the bonds of community that you form here and the bonds of community that you form in the years to come, the importance of those cannot be underscored. So it's great to, it's a great pleasure to see an institution like this which allows that community to be built. Now, the topic that I've been given to speak is fact, fairness, and accountability. I don't think so. I can underscore the perils that media and journalism is facing in all fronts, and I don't think so even you are unaware of that. I think all of us, the global information age has thrown upon us a very, very stark reality, which is probably quite different from a very romantic reality of what journalism may have once been, or maybe we may never have been, but may have been imagined to be. And I think probably the latter is true. I don't think so, as they say, the good old days, I don't think so there were any good old days of anything. I think there were always good old days in retrospect. Yeah, I'm sure back in the day also they had their struggles. We have our struggles. We have to fight our struggles. And we have to sort of not be bowed down, because it's easy to be skeptical, it's easy to be pessimistic, but believe me, it's great fun in fighting a good fight. And though you might win 1 out of 5 battles, you might win 1 out of 10 battles, but winning that one battle is really worth the joy that it brings. So, you have already made a conscious choice. You're here in this profession, whether you do journalism, whether you do communication, whether you do graphic design, and I'm very impressed to see the wide mix of subjects that are being taught here. But at the heart, I think most of you, I would imagine, were drawn here by a certain commitment to constitutional values, to public liberties, and in your own way, whichever direction you might take, that will be at the heart of what we'll do. And therefore, what I thought, what I could sort of paint today is what I have seen 4 big challenges that media is facing right now. And the kind of maybe portray around the kind of challenges we are facing, and also the solutions, some possible solutions, and some path to look forward to and build your career. I mean, especially you, a lot of hope is on you. You as in anybody who's entering the field right now, because we do hope the next, the fight will be carried on by a more conscious, mix of journalists who enter the profession. So therefore, a lot more hope. And let me just, paint a small, very, very quick outline of the 4 big challenges I feel the media is facing. And of course, I'll go into the detail of that. The first and foremost is the crisis of ethics, that I'm sure everybody is very well cognizant on how we talk about media has lost its ethical compass, and that's, I think, the topic, ethical compass. There's no more trust in big media. Everybody is compromised, everybody is bought over, everybody has an agenda. That's true to a large extent. I mean, that is true, but why is it? Why is it the first time in the history that we are talking about that? No, of course not. I think media, since its inception, has had a very, what you can say, very combative and yet collaborative relationship with something called nationalism. And it's always struggled, because media has been part of a nationalistic project of some or the other kind, and also has tried to fight against that nationalism. So there's been always a lot of tension between media, journalism, and nationalism. And I'll come to the details of that. The second, of course, is the business model of media, and how it has become far more difficult to run independent, sustainable journalistic enterprises. It's very important that journalists are aware of it, because at the end of the day, the journalists are the heart of a media organization. If they are not cognizant that the enterprise they're working for is financially sustainable, the business people will do a very bad job of it. The business people will do a job which will kill journalism. So it's better that journalists know that, we need to save our profession, and we need to be actively involved in figuring out how to save it. The third is, of course, the legal environment in which journalism operates. And especially in India, how the legal environment puts a lot of pressure and a lot of constraints on our liberty, on our freedom of speech. It gives us freedom of speech, it also takes away freedom of speech. And it's very important how it takes away so that we can fight. And the fourth, which has become far more important, and I wouldn't have said this fourth one 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we don't even have thought about it, but today it is the biggest challenge, which is dominance of big tech platforms. Those 4 or 5 platforms now have become bigger arbiters, bigger monitors, censors of content than any government. The most draconian government you can think about, these 4 or 5 platforms have bigger power than them. And they are flooding the internet with content which could be fake, which could be false, which is AI generated, which is polarizing, and which is taking away the reader's right to know what is actually fair and accurate, and therefore puts things to accountability. They are taking away these powers in their own way. So what is the challenge that that's thrown? And one of the questions that as journalists we all talk about, I think the first thing I'm sure you, I believe you have a festival here called Article 19. And Article 19, by the way, is a provision in almost all liberal democracies, constitutions. It's become synonymous with free speech. And there's always a great talk, okay, you know, we are here for free speech. But what really is free speech? Has there ever been free speech? Because we always say, oh, you know, today we're not living in an environment of free speech. Was there ever free speech? And I must say, I came across very recently this book written by a Princeton philosopher. His name is Farah Dabaiwala. I guess he's a Parsi, but in Princeton. And the book is called What is Free Speech? The History of a Dangerous Idea. And the book is written from the context of the American First Amendment. And those of you who are aware of it, the American First Amendment guarantees you absolute free speech. It's probably the only constitution in the world where your freedom of speech is completely guaranteed, and it ensures that the Constitution ensures that the government cannot make any laws to restrict free speech. It's a very, very American example of American exceptionalism. In India, we have Article 19.1, which gives us free speech. Now, 19.1.2 says that there can be exceptions on that. And most European democracies also have constitutions where there is some balance. But America is one country where free speech is absolute. So in the book, he traces the journey of how this evolved starting from the days of great philosophers like Milton and Voltaire, and goes on to John Stuart Mill, and how the American exceptionalism came about. And in the U.S. Capitol, there are these immortal words: without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. Now, these words generally are attributed to Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of American democracy, but actually are written by two anonymous gentlemen. I mean, their names are now known, but under a pseudonym called Cato's Letter. In case somebody's heard these letters, Cato's letters were written in a journal in England, in London, in early 1700s, and they had sort of first propounded the importance of freedom of speech. And this became a constitution or foundational sort of letters, documents, where the entire European and the American thinking about liberty and free speech came about. So much so that like Benjamin Franklin sort of published it in something called Silence Do Good Letters and became part of the American Constitution. But what Dabaiwala very, very nicely illustrates is this freedom of speech has always been championed by in the context of the people who are propagating it. So one of the writers both the writers of this so-called Cato's Letter, which were guaranteeing freedom of speech universally, were themselves involved or very deeply connected to slave ownership. One of them actually later on became a government censor. These letters were written with the context of a very white supremacist male, place, and for white men, written by white men, written for white men. So freedom of speech has always been championed by people for their own people. So, they call it universal, but it's never universal. It's for a certain cohort. Blacks were out of it, slaves were out of it, women were out of it, white men with slave-owning men, it's their freedom of speech. The reason I'm sort of bringing it up is because my first theme, nationalism and freedom of speech. Media has always operated in an environment where it is serving some nationalistic cause. There's a philosopher of nationalism called Benedict Anderson, if somebody's read. He came up with a theory of nationalism. What is a nation? Nation is an imagined community, he says, because we all imagine that we are part of one nation. We don't know everybody in the one nation, whatever nation you might talk about, whether geographical, whether linguistic, whether religious. You imagine that you're part of one nation. Now, how do you imagine that? How does that imagination come about? It comes about by the interplay of media. Similar people spread geographically, reading the same newspaper, arguing the same line of thought, end up finding a same common nation. So what we call as nationalism, which is always challenged, let's not be a nationalist. Media is the vehicle for nationalism. And media is always produced, written by people who belong to a certain societal construct. So obviously, their idea will be determined from where they are. So it's, when we say that, and I'm sort of trying to contextualize it in the context of the present times, when we say our media has become subservient to a nationalist cause, well, it was always a subservient to nationalist cause, right from the inception. It's nothing new. We were always part of nationalist cause. The Indian media, the first Indian media found its foothold, the Indian-owned media, in response to the patriotic national independence movement. It was meant to be a vehicle for rallying a nationalistic cause. Sure, it was a far more larger nationalistic cause, but it was a nationalistic cause nonetheless against the British. That's when the Indian-owned media took on. In 1960s, and since we are Southern India, we can say that with a little bit more of liberty, then the Southern media language press suddenly shot up in its reach, in its circulation. That was in response to a certain consciousness of language-based nationalism against the hegemony of Hindi, dominance of Hindi that was probably at some point being put around. So in Tamil Nadu, there were the Justice Party, and the paper called Dina Thanti, which was associated with DMK, they grew in circulation far more in a far more expeditious manner than the Hindi newspapers. In Andhra Pradesh, there was Inadu, which grew along with the rise of TDP and N.T. Ramarao. And similarly, in Kerala, mass mobilization happened and newspaper circulation grew. So the language newspaper grew in India far more in southern India, along with nationalism that was taking place at that time. In northern India, the Hindi papers grew much later. That was in the 80s. That was the time when two things happened. There was the Mandal Commission, which brought about awareness, reach, education to a far bigger cross-section of society. And there was also the Hindu nationalist movement that brought about a much larger consciousness. So the papers in northern India grew much later, in 80s and 90s. Two things happened. At one point, Hindi newspapers became far more dominant with the rise of nationalist movement, Hindu nationalist movement. At the same time, with the Mandal Commission, a far larger cross-section of people came within the reach of newspapers. So two things happened at the same time, and suddenly we see the spurt of Hindi newspapers. So when we say that, suddenly that media has become subservient, it's not fair to say. I think, it's always been part of it. And today, there's one of the important things that is talked about, that is how inclusive is our media in terms of its makeup of the newsrooms. I think, in all fairness to say, much of the northern Indian newspapers are still very much a domain of the upper caste ownership and editorship. And therefore, the worldview that is put out will obviously be a result of your own biases. Often, this question, do not bring a bias to a newsroom. Well, how can you not bring a bias? You are in this field because you have a certain bias. You have a certain political thinking. You are either right of center or left of center or whatever you might think. You are in this field because you're opinionated. So it's wrong to say that you can't have bias. But is your bias informing your reporting or your factual objectivity, or is the bias a foundational element and then you let the reporting take over? That is what separates a good journalism from not so good journalism. So when we say that today's media has become nationalist, yes, there is a greater concern. I think there is a sense of hyper-nationalism. I mean, 4 months ago, if one was to look at some of the TV channels, we had already captured Islamabad and Lahore and Karachi. I mean, there is that side of media which has become too unbridled, where in the so-called quest for proving your nationalist credentials, you are completely disregarding any kind of objectivity. That is, of course, I think, a far greater danger today that we are facing. And the hope, the expectation from the new generation is that don't worry about having biases. I think be cognizant that we will have biases, but we will create a newsroom which is inclusive. Make a newsroom, be part of a newsroom which is a microcosm of the society that we live in. Have people from, of course, I think gender is not such a big battle. If I may say today, it was a battle many years ago in Indian newsroom, at least at the larger level. But maybe at the leadership level, yes, even now when I look around, I mean, I'm part of the Editors Guild of India, it's about 180 people. It is a very male-dominated field still. So at the leadership level, gender is a problem. But the good thing is, at the middle and at the younger level, it's far more balanced. In fact, it's really very balanced. One hopes that the leadership sort of asymmetry would get taken care of in the next 10 years. But it's the ethnic diversity that is more troublesome. Ethnic diversity, especially the caste diversity, linguistic, regional diversity, that needs to be part of our Indian newsrooms. Need to be far more inclusive. Even now, if you look at newspapers from southern India and northern India, you will find that they are largely owned and run by a people of certain community. A newspaper is largely still being run by a certain community. That needs to break, because if that doesn't break, that newspaper will remain subservient to a nationalistic cause. Again, nationalism doesn't come in one form or one color. It can come in many forms. It can be language, religion, your community. It could be, of course, an idea of a nation versus another idea of a nation. You know, you could have differences in what kind of a nation you are. The newsroom needs to sort of find a way to balance extremes, balance different directions, and bring the newsroom. We all might be, some of us might be the center, some of us might be in the left or the right, but the newsroom needs to be close to center. It doesn't happen, but it's like a horizon. You know, you're always running towards it. But let's not run away from it. Let's not be blind to it. And let's make sure that your reader is getting a sort of a balanced picture from all over. The newsroom needs to be plural, inclusive, fairness, objectivity. All these things become a sort of a natural byproduct if a newsroom sort of encapsulates this diversity. The second big challenge that we are facing in India is the business, and again globally, is the business model of media. And this is the question I remember in the morning also, it came up in our small discussions, that how does media operate? There was a time when media was a very profitable enterprise. That was about 20, 30 years ago. Last 10 years, most media have struggled. I mean, of course, there is a shift to digital, which has taken away revenues, which has taken away audiences, thinned down revenues. But the other big problem in the Indian context, and which is a big shackle, and I think it's a very unique Indian problem, is the excessive dependence of large media on government advertising. Today, those figures vary in terms of the way you can estimate, but 30 to 40% of revenues that are coming to any large newspaper or a news channel is coming from government source. It could be central, it could be state, it could be a PSU department. Now, the hand that feeds you, you cannot bite that hand. That's the old maxim. So in an environment where government is your biggest benefactor, how can you be objective? And this is, again, I always say we make this very easy judgment that everything that is wrong in Indian media has happened in the last 10 years. This is an age-old problem. This is a 50-year-old problem. Every government that comes increases the budget. If you see, they always increase the budget of media spend. You know, and this problem is far bigger in the states, you know, because in a state, if you're running a newspaper or a new TV channel, that government's budget is far more important to you than when you're in the national level, because at the national level, you still have multiple sources. In a state, that becomes far more important, and unless you collaborate with the government, there is no way you can operate. Now, you know, you all read newspapers, I hope. You see the newspaper, how much does it cost? 5 rupees, 6 rupees, 8 rupees, maybe sometimes the Hindu might cost 10 rupees on a weekend. A similar newspaper, you know, you go to Pakistan, what is the price of a newspaper? It's 50 rupees. You go to Kenya, I went to Kenya last month. Kenya's per capita income is exactly same as India. An average newspaper is 50 rupees. You know, and you see both the newspapers, and I'm taking these two examples because of very, obvious reasons. One is a neighbor and one is another, you know, African country, low income. Both these countries are primarily, newspaper model is making money from the reader. There is hardly any government advertising, there is no government support, and the commitment is to tell the reader what is happening. Now, if your first customer is reader, you will obviously be true to them. If your first customer is the advertiser, and that also government advertiser, we all know what happens. You know, we remember what happened last year when, take any scheme that the government announces at a central level, the newspapers are the first to sort of publicize. Take any scheme that a government in a state announces, that state's newspapers will first champion it, as if this is the best thing. There's no questioning. How will they be questioning? I mean, if you are in Karnataka, and this is the problem that lies on both sides of the aisle. Today, the government here announces a big scheme, and they advertise that with multiple crores in the local newspapers. Which newspaper in the right mind will even question it, And especially when they're charging, they're giving you the newspaper literally free of cost. So this model has to change completely. And this can't change very easily because it's so intrinsic, it's so structurally deep, and it becomes worse over time because every government that comes, they say, paisa to badayenge. We'll increase the money to the media because we need to control them. So now what do? If legacy media is sort of becomes entrapped in it, you find an answer, in independent media does manage it. You need to have you need to have a model where the reader pays for the content. And again, I don't have a very clear solution for it. I can only say this is a problem to keep in mind. If you want to be in a media house, or if you want to run an independent media house setup where you will make money from advertising, you will probably never be objective. But if you find a solution where you make money from reader first, you have a much better chance. The third big problem is the legal front. And coming back to Article 19, 19.1 gives us freedom of speech, 19.2 gives government powers to make exceptions to freedom of speech. And those exceptions, can I show of hand how many people have read 19.1a and 19.2? Show of hands. All right, please do read it. Go back and read it. It's very foundationally important. 19.1 we all know for freedom of speech. 19.2 says, in the interest of sovereignty, the state can make laws that will impose reasonable restrictions in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, security of state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency, morality, or in relation to contempt of court or defamation. Now, something like morality, public order, friendly relations with state, sovereignty also, these are all very subjective things. What is moral? Morality to me may be par course for somebody else. What is public order? A newspaper reporter reporting on an ethnic clash between two communities reports that community A member killed community B member person. One can argue that by writing this, you are further fomenting discord. But you are just doing your job. You are reporting what's happening. Now that can be taken as an excuse to challenge, to put a complaint against you, that you, by writing, some objective truth, are creating distrust in community, between two communities. If you're writing against the army is an institution that what is the job of journalism? Job of journalism is to check establishment, any establishment, not just political establishment. It could be government, it could be judiciary, it could be army, it could be corporate, it could be sports bodies, it could be, people in power in any field. Now, many times when people tell us, okay, why don't you write good things about somebody? Obvious answer is they can write about them good things about. They have their Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and their own PR communities, channels to tell good things about them. Our job as a journalist is to write about them, is to question them. So therefore, what I was coming to, in terms of security of state, writing a critical story on the army can invite that your article is against security of state. Now, these exceptions, they have found a space, and it's important that I would suggest just read up a bit on laws if you're really serious about journalism, because these exceptions have found space in a mix of criminal and civil laws that today intersect with free speech. We just have there was an Indian Penal Code that was in action till about 2 years ago or till last year. Now we have something called BNS. In both these laws, in both these criminal systems, hate crime, any spoken or written word that can create public order is punishable. Any obscene language is punishable. Now that power to decide that, the question here is who has been given the power to decide that? The power to decide that has been given to a government officer, many times a police officer. And the way it works is that if I am not happy with your reporting or my government of the day is not happy with your reporting, they will ask somebody, a private citizen, to file a complaint against you. And if you are the government in that state, that police station will file that complaint into something called an FIR, and proceedings will start against you. You may be imprisoned, you may not be imprisoned, but you have to fight it out. The process becomes a punishment, and it creates something called chilling effect. If I know that one of my colleagues wrote an article and a complaint was filed against them, and he had to, got involved in a very expensive and long-drawn legal fight, what are my motivations to fight, to do true journalism? It's a chilling effect. So we are living in an environment, in a legal system that really puts a lot of restrictions on freedom of speech, and that has weaponized the legal system. In the civil domain, now in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of laws have come in that can allow the government the powers to take down content. There was the IT laws, IT Act, which is 2001. There's something called Section 66 there. The government has a power to take down content which it feels problematic. 2021, some IT rules were introduced, which again gave the government a power to take down content what is problematic. Now, you can challenge them, but challenging them is time consuming, and your content has already been taken down. In fact, last year or two years ago, if some of you might remember, the government had come up with something called a fact-checking unit. And the fact-checking unit was given a power to determine what is fake, false, or misleading regarding the government's own affairs. So as a result, I am being a judge and a victim in my own case, which is a big, contrary to so-called principles of natural justice. Now we had to go to the court to, fight it out. Luckily, the court struck it down. Luckily, the court saw the reasoning that the government itself cannot give itself the absolute power to determine what is fake and misleading regarding its own affairs and order content takedown. That has to be done by an independent body, if at all. So the whole thing was taken down. So the short story is that legal system is there, which is open to interpretation, but there's a solution. The solution is collective action. In last 3-4 years itself, there have been certain victories where certain laws have been either modified. Fact-checking law is one of those. Sedition used to be a part of our colonial history. It was there since 1861, and to 2022, finally the Supreme Court said that sedition law is part of, sedition was being used a lot against journalists. And we went to the court, long arguments, the court finally struck down sedition law. Now that's the sad irony is that when the new criminal law was introduced in BNS, the government has introduced sedition again under the name treason. So this back and forth happens. But again, I think it's a nature of the state to try and control press. It's been done since the inception of state. It's been done in the most liberal societies. It's being done in perhaps the most liberal society that we can think of today. I mean, we're seeing what's happening in America, the country of First Amendment. And there also the state is right now going down on, on free speech. It's been done by governments other than the current one. In fact, in 2010, the previous government had come up with something called a law to regulate press. And that law, that law thankfully got shelved, but it was far more draconian than anything we have seen. So it's a nature of the state. Whoever is in power, it's like power corrupts you and absolute power corrupts you absolutely. Whoever comes to power tries to use that system, tries to find maneuvers to control speech, control press freedom. And our job and your job is to find ways to fight it, and those battles can be fought. One important thing, at least whoever is entering journalism, I know a lot of you might go into multiple allied fields, design and communication and marketing. But if you're entering journalism, please, take one advice today, make friends with lawyers. You will find great allies with lawyers. There are enough and more empathetic lawyers in this country, young, senior, made, and they are willing to fight the battle that we believe in. At the Guild, we've been very fortunate. We've almost had 7 or 8 cases that we have filed in the last 5 years, all of them pro bono, all of them being argued by some of the top legal minds of the country, the briefs being prepared by very young lawyers, graduates of various law schools, National Law School, NALSA, all those things. And it's a great camaraderie. Find friendship, because in collective action you can blunt the even most, what you can say, most draconian step. Find, alliances not just between, between you as journalists and lawyers, between you and journalists and various journalistic organizations, like-minded journalist organizations need to work together. If you're part of an independent organization, make some alliance with other independent organizations. Collective action can really can go a long way. And then the final problem that we are facing in our profession right now, which is probably right now I feel the most difficult one. You know, nationalism you can control by making a very inclusive newsroom. You know, all you need is inclusive, democratic newsroom. Get everybody's opinions. Make sure that you are, you know, your newsroom is a product of objective thinking. Ownership model, you can still find a way. You know, be independent. Legal challenges, you can fight the battles. We have had successes. You know, there are a lot of successes that we have had in blunting. But the last one is the one that we need to find an answer, which is the problem of big tech. Because this is where only 4 or 5 companies have now controlled the entire airspace and the online space that we are doing, that we are operating in. What you are seeing is seldom a result or governed by what you want to see, but what they want you to see, or rather, in fact, is often what you want to see. So, if I've been seeing a content of a certain kind, you all know about algorithmic programming. The platform will serve you more and more of the same content rather than serve you diverse content. So if you are a right of center person, it will serve you more of right of center content. If you're a left of center person, it will serve you more and more of left of center. As a result, you get more polarized, I feel. You know, unlike in the analog world where you will be forced to come across diverse, you know, reports and opinions, in the online world, it's becoming more and more silos. You are part of a silo and you keep on going deeper into silos. Then there is a problem of content that is being produced by legitimate organizations by due process, by human reporting, fact-checking and editing, as against something by a one-man shop which is producing more AI-generated content. Both are put at equal power. Often the latter, because that is generated by using, you know, figuring out what is viral, what is supposed to provoke, what is supposed to go, you know, find more readers. The platforms promote that more than something which is probably a little bit more boring and more rigorously produced, because it doesn't go as viral, it's not as provocative. So we are living in a very dangerous place, and we can see the results. I mean, we see what's happening all over the world. Polarization has gone through, I mean, it's become widened. The gap between, you know, the left and the right actually has become far wider. It's becoming wider and wider because we are all living in echo chambers. We are all living in worlds where fake news is being put out, misinformation, disinformation, and it's to the benefit of the platform. They are the ones who are benefiting it. They're not, you know, they're not paying the cost. The cost is a societal cost. They are getting, because people are getting more engaged there, people are spending more and more time, they are far above any scrutiny. They don't come under any legal system's mandate. These are national, transnational organizations, often headquartered in some obscure place. They are not subject to laws or as much of laws that we would like them to be. And then, you know, I mean, at the information level, they're creating this asymmetry. At the financial level, they're taking away all the revenue of legitimate guys like us who are spending time and effort in gathering news, in gathering a certain spending time, resources in fact checking and editing. So this is a big challenge that, again, which requires a lot of collective power, but this requires a lot of state action. I don't think so without proper state intervention this can be, you know, this is not a group of multiple media organizations that can come together easily and fight it out. This requires, of course, a judicial intervention, and this also requires a solid engagement at the state level, and something, again, which we have to gear up for. And it requires foregrounding at a far deeper level. Because the sense is all these organizations have taken the excuse that we are for free speech. You know, and therefore we allow every opinion to be there, therefore there should be any kind of control. In fact, if you all know, Facebook used to have a big fact-checking department. Now last year, after the Trump administration came, and I think because, you know, what about the dynamics is something a little difficult to sort of fathom, but Facebook completely has moved away from any kind of fact-checking exercise. So now you're left to yourself. You know, ideally, I mean, and these are some of the set of tools that we have to think that a platform should take some onus in terms of branding what content is being flagged as fake, what content is produced from a reliable versus non-reliable organization. They can't leave it to the market dynamics that let the readers figure it out, and we will not have any role. No, they have become publishers. They are no longer platforms, they are publishers. They need to be reined in, and they need to be actively involved in finding a way. And some countries are doing it, by the way. Canada passed a law I think recently. Australia passed a law where they are being mandated. But more governments need to be there. As a journalist, I know it's a very big battle, but we need to be cognizant that these battles are there. Now, where does it leave us? All of you are entering field, and surely we have a very pessimistic, one can say that there's a very pessimistic environment. But I would say, it's only when you're in a pessimistic state that the battle is worth the fun. And I can just say from my own example, I mean, what great fighting, what great joy will it be fighting at a time when everything is by the rule, everything is, going by the clock. It's at a time like this because you see the arc of human history. This is not the first time, we are in this crisis or a crisis. There is always a crisis or the other. It's just part of human need that we will come out with that crisis. We'll find a balance. There was a time when what we would see on Facebook or WhatsApp, we will accept it without question. Today, no, we question. Today, we want to know, is it fake or not? I mean, there is larger consciousness, far larger than it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I think this will only change. People will be far more cognizant that has this been produced by some human intervention or has been produced by an AI-generated model. Sooner or later, there will be a human need. I mean, when COVID struck, there was a lot talk that, finally, I mean, this is the world of offline has gone away. People will only engage content online. We will only see Netflix. We will only listen to music on Spotify or whatever you are listening. And that's the end of offline world. All right, this was 2020, 2021. We are in 25 now, and the last 2 years, I believe, I know, okay, show of hands, how many of you are Taylor Swift fans? Yeah, okay, much lesser than I thought they would be. You guys know the Taylor Swift concerts, the $1 billion record-breaking concerts. Now, could we have imagined that 5 years ago, that in a post-COVID world, actually the physical concert will be a far larger value, far larger scale than we could have ever imagined? Movies, cinema-going experience, we thought it was dead of cinema. No, the cinema has come back. There was a time when gramophone records, and I think that you will remember from your time, sir, gramophone records was such a weakish thing. Today, again, gramophones are coming back. So my point is, these ups and downs are part of the journey. I would say take it as a blessing that if you are up for a fight, then you are in this moment. You have a great fight coming up. I think, we have reached the bottom. I hope so. There's only way up now. And a great joy to say that previous generations had their own battles. They fought emergency, they fought some other, generation before that fought the colonial rule. There were wars, much bigger wars. We say that we are living in a time of war, Ukraine war. Sure, these are horrible wars. Nothing compared to the wars that probably happened in the last century, right? So when we look back, these battles get shadowed by what previous generations have seen. And we are in a far better place still, far better place than last 300 years have been. There is space for all the kind of journalism you want to do. These battles are there. It will come to a true. Keep focus on the first principles. Keep focus on the immense human need. Again, when we say our national media has been completely subsumed by a certain kind, it doesn't matter. The readership wants objective view. Today, there is a reason why many independent journalists are doing exceedingly well in their own channels, because the readership wants. No matter what Trump may do to rein in big media, the electorate wants questioning. You cannot forever stifle free speech, however rhetorical, however polemical, and however romantic it may sound at some point. It is a human need. It has got a demand. We have to keep our faith that we have to fight the battle, we will get our ways, and we have to organize ourselves with that in mind. And so please keep that in mind. You are entering a field which is great fun. Winning these battles, fighting these battles is great fun. Yes, it's not the most financially rewarding field as it may be, so make a conscious choice, but it can be far better than sometimes the moment might tell us. So please have a great rest of the course and all the best for the journey ahead. Thank you.
Power, parity, and narrative dynamics. Thank you, Mr. Ananth, for articulating your views on the autonomy of free speech, given the contemporary scenario of various concomitant factors at play, such as that of ethics, community, politics, linguistic schisms, and biases. Your words commemorating the meaningful lecture are woven into the fabric of this given event. That said, dear audience, we have a very brief Q&A session ready. You may avail this opportunity. I would invite you to lift your hands if you have any questions. Yes. Yeah.
All.
Test.
Thank you so much, sir. I have a questions. So when journalists, they hold power to account, so who ensures the accountability inside the media? So, how can journalists cultivate trust without the surrendering their editorial autonomy? So, yeah.
Can you just repeat the question? Sorry, just
Yeah, so I want to know that when the journalists hold the power to account, who ensures the accountability inside the media, and how can journalists also cultivate the trust without surrendering their editorial autonomy? So
if I get the question right, you're saying when journalists speak truth to power,
yeah.
How do we ensure that they are able to sort of not surrendering the accountability?
Yeah.
Right. Again, I'll just pick up from some themes that that I've already touched upon. There are always sort of hurdles and temptations that can come in your way. It could be mix of both. It could be mix of economic. It could be mix of fear. All right, because and let's move away from politics right now. Let's go to the economic field. As a business journalist, writing a big enterprise, there's always a fear that you could be corrupted, and they would try to corrupt you. That's a personal choice you have to make. All right. The other is, of course, the fear is any kind of repercussion. And I think again, I'm going to repeat myself that you can give in to the fear, you can give it, or you could prepare for the fear. So prepare would be to make sure that whatever work you are doing is, it also, it is a very rigorously, objectively done, and it also appears very rigorously and objectively done. And then you're prepared that, should something come your way, whether in terms of legal action, whether in terms of something else, you have your mode of protection, which could be, getting the right legal opinion. It could be, of course, any other mode of protection in terms of your organizational support. And I think your question perhaps is more relevant for independent journalists, right? Because if you're part of an institution, then that institution is anyway giving you that kind of mode of protection. As an individual journalist, it is difficult. It can be sometimes far more dangerous if you are an independent journalist in a small town. And there are being cases where an independent journalist writing against, let's say, a sand mafia or a mining mafia in a small town, deaths do happen. And that's a conscious, it's a choice that you have made for yourself. You have to make sure that you have your layers of protection around you. But at the end, you're running a risk. You're running a risk. You take a well-informed choice, and you just make sure that you're not making any you're not giving them opening in terms of getting at you legally, and especially legally, I would say.
Yes, sir. My name is Aryan Kumar, and my question is, during the emergency of 1975 to 1977, Indian Express left their editorial blank, though they did not had this much resources which we have now. But today, media is much more pliable, even though we have more resources and everything. Why is the case right now? Not it was like 5 decades ago. We didn't have any resources back then, but we have more resources. Why we are so dependent on the government, and why we are so much pliable and ready to bend? Thank you.
Well, the answer is, again, something I touched upon. Two things that have happened in the last 40 years. Media's dependence on government has really gone up. It wasn't so much in 1975, to the best of my knowledge, where government advertising was such a big part of media's financials. Today, it is far, far more. And therefore, it is far difficult for even for any independent-minded publication house to take on the government, because the incentives are so strong towards accepting government money at a time when the business model of media itself has become weak. 1970s, 80s, 90s was a time when generally media itself was a far stronger business. So you could take up a fight far more easily. In fact, so I wanted to reverse your thing that I think there were more resources at that time. Media was far more self-sufficient that time than it is today. Today, if you take out the government advertising, most media houses will be in heavy losses. It probably would not have been the case at that time. So we are on crutches which are difficult to sort of let go of. The other is, of course, I think this is a question of introspection for the media, that why have they given in so blatantly? And there are three things: financial, fear of repercussion, because you've seen from examples of others who have been independent the kind of price they've had to pay in terms of some kind of, it could be, tax rates, it could be inquiries, and the third is some amount of ideological affinity. You can find, the way newspapers in southern India, I've seen, I don't read the papers, but the way they operated, whereas the newspapers in northern and central India, there's a clear divide, there's a clear ideological divide. I think much of the ownership and the editorial leadership of newspapers and big media in northern part of the country is far more ideologically inclined. So you see far lesser questioning, but in southern India you see far more. So there I would say, this is a byproduct of ideological alignment within the newsrooms as well.
Good evening, Mr. Nath. My name is Riya Singh, and I'm a second-year student at the master's program here at MIC. My question is with regards to the caravan. There have been some very invigorating reports, including, I think it was in the November of 2017, when there was a report on the suspicious death of Judge P.H. Loya, and also the 2024 article titled Screams from the Army Post. When your team faces such rebuttal from the government themselves, I would like to know, what do you do on your part to keep the morale going? Because I can only assume that they are very disheartened after weeks and months of research.
So the first thing you do is you don't let the team front it, you front it. All right? Any attack that comes, I have to take it. When I say I, the organization has to be at the front. Any right-minded organization, news media organization, should protect the reporters, and that's what we try to do. Whether it is a public backlash or whether it's a governmental backlash, we are at the forefront. And with the let's say the Screams from the Army's post, the article was taken down by the government. We have challenged it in the High Court. We are pursuing it. It is taking time. And that's the unfortunate reality of Indian judicial systems, that cases takes years. So it takes a month, or it takes not a month, a day to pull down an article. The way it happened with Screams from the Army Post was, we were sent a notice after the article was published that your article is against national interest, so on and so forth. Appear for a, it's called, they called us for an explanatory meeting, an online meeting with the government, multiple people from 8 organizations, 8 ministries were there. We went, presented our case. They said, that was a process that they had done. You had to do that process, and at the end of the day, they say, we're not satisfied, you have to block your article. Otherwise, we'll block your website. So you took down the article, and then under protest, and went to the court. Now, that was March 2024, and it's the end of 2025, and the case hasn't moved. So you live with that. It's at the end of the day, and I think I was saying earlier that, what do you do with the cases that are filed against you, defamation cases filed against you, any other cases? I think that's fair play. You're living in a society where legal system allows certain checks and balances, you play with it. You have to be prepared with it. You can't say, oh my God, this is attack on freedom of speech. No, this is not really attack on freedom of speech when somebody is using an available legal provision. Yes, if the provision is unfair, then we have to fight that provision, which is a far larger battle. But now you're in this society, you follow the rules. And you can't say that they are, sure, it's an attack on freedom of speech, but it's playing by the rules. So you fight it out. There is no other way. Fight it out, and fight it out properly.
Good evening, sir. My name is Gabrielle Clementine Vegas. I'm a first-year student here at BAMC and MIC. So recently, actually, we were having a discussion about something similar, and someone in class made a statement that there is no more news, there is only propaganda. And I wanted to ask you, and I went back home and I was having like a discussion with my parents, and I was like, why am I even, I had a full-on existential crisis. Why am I even studying journalism if we can't go out and speak the truth without having a fear of being killed? And how you still pursue this and speak the truth, and which battles to fight and things like that. How do you know if this is a battle worth fighting, or if this is an article worth fighting and risking your life for? And how do you choose whether you want to say the truth or stay alive?
Well, you follow the inner conscience that you have. So you enter this profession. Yes, I would say in the immediate future, there is a time where outlets that can allow you truly independent journalism, even the ones that used to be there doing earlier, they've become far more mellowed. So that's the reality of thing. Now you can choose either to be part of one of those organizations and just play by the rule, or you choose an organization which is more independent, which are few and far, by the way. So it's not that there are many of those. I don't have a very encouraging answer to say. I don't think that this is a time which is right now rewarding complete independence in terms of both ability, the output of work, and also the financially, because at the end of the day, there are financial constraints that we are all living in. So we can't be devoid of that reality. Independent journalism is an option available to some, but not to everybody, because it doesn't work for all. If you're really committed, I would say just bid your time. Be a part of an organization that you feel at least somewhat empathetic towards. Bid your time. Don't do the kind of work that you don't want to be associated with. It's okay. Large organizations, not everybody is, they're doing, frankly, most big, large organizations, sometimes we simplify that everybody is doing propaganda work. No. A lot of large organizations, there are pockets which are doing some very good work. They just get overlooked because that doesn't come as the front page news of the article. So find your space. And I don't want to take names here, but very large organizations who we sometimes deride, कि अरे ये तो propagandist है. But there are lots of good work happening there also. Maybe on the large matters they're not being as independent, but on many other things that they're being independent. So find a space for yourself rather, and keep fighting the battle.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We now close the line of questions. We are very grateful to our chief guest for honoring us with his presence and for sharing his valuable perspectives. On this note of conviviality, we invite Dr. Narayana Sabahit, as also our director, Dr. Shubha HS, to felicitate the chief guest. Dear students, can we have a round of applause? Surely we have got a lot of vitamin on our plate today. On behalf of MIC, as a token of gratitude, I furthermore request Shubha ma'am to present a memento to Dr. Narayan Sabahit. Thank you, sir, very much for being amongst us, in your busy schedule. Lastly, in the spirit of ceremonious closure, I request Dr. Padma Kumar K, Professor and Head, Department of Communication Management, to present the vote of thanks.
Distinguished guests on the dais, faculty members, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and honor to propose the vote of thanks for this momentous occasion, the 10th M.V. Kamath Memorial Endowment Lecture. First and foremost, I extend my deepest gratitude to our chief guest, Mr. Anant Nath, editor of The Caravan, for graciously accepting our invitation, and also for delivering such an insightful and thought-provoking lecture on facts, fairness, and accountability. Your expertise and perspective on these critical pillars of journalism have really enriched our understanding and inspired all of us today. Thank you, sir, for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us today. I express my sincere thanks to Dr. Narayan Sabahit, Pro-Vice Chancellor of Technology and Science, Mahi Manipal, for presiding over this event. Your presence and guidance have added immense value to this program, and your continued support for such academic initiatives is deeply appreciated. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. Shubha HS, Director, MIC, for meticulously organizing this event. Your dedication, hard work, and attention to detail have ensured the seamless execution of this program. I would like to also place on record our gratitude to Udayavani for sponsoring this prestigious event. We are particularly thankful to Mr. Vinod Kumar, Managing Director and CEO of Manipal Media Network Limited, the publisher of Udayavani, for their continued support and commitment to fostering quality journalism education. Special thanks to Professor Madhav Das Nalpat. Sir is not here in Manipal with us. We miss you, sir. And also Dr. Padma Rani for their invaluable support and encouragement in making this lecture series a success year after year. And Professor Madhav Das Nalpat has also connected us to Mr. Anant Nath, and special thanks to him for that too. I extend my warm appreciation to all my colleagues at MIC Manipal for their cooperation and teamwork in making this event possible. Thanks to Diya Madodi, MA second year student, for all her poster designs, and all the other students from broadcast who are here helping us today. Thank you. I also thank all the faculty members, staff, students who have joined us today, making this gathering meaningful with your presence and participation. As we commemorate the 10th edition of this memorial lecture series, we remember and honor the legacy of legendary journalist Dr. M.V. Kamath, whose commitment to ethical journalism continues to inspire us even today. Thank you all once again for being part of this significant event. Thank you.
Thank you. We may now disperse.